Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I am Lori Harris, and I am managing partner of Harris Whitesell Consulting. I'm very honored to have you on our show today. And with us today, our guest speaker is Marisa Zalabak, and she is a world-renowned speaker. She speaks on AI ethics. She's also an educational psychologist, a climate advocate, an author, a researcher, and an educator. She's the founder of Open Channel Culture, and she serves with the IEEE. Now, you got to know this one. It's the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. As co-chair of the AI Ethics Education Committee, she chairs the Global Methodologies for Planet Positive 230 and is a contributor to the AI Design Standards for Human Well-being. She's a dedicated optimist, advisor, advocate for human and planetary well-being with vast, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, vast experience across sectors and fields. She provides pragmatic pathways for leaders and organizations to embrace emerging opportunities in AI responsibly and engaging all stakeholders while meeting the challenges of rapid change in technology, the environment, and society. Let me say that again. She is involved deeply with rapid changes in technology, environment, and society. And that is our world today for current and future generations. She's a senior fellow with the Digital Economist. She partners with a diverse range of global leaders and think tanks such as All Tech is Human, Smart Ethics, UNESCO, MKAI, Women for Solutions, Million Peacemakers, the Knowledge Impact Network, Presencing Institute, the Willie Mae Rock Camp, and most recently, she's been involved with the UN at a variety of levels, specifically environmental. And so, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Marisa Zalabak.
Well, Lori, I'm very, very happy, pleased to be here, and more than anything, really to share as much information as I have, as much learning as I've had in this new adventure that we're on, because that's really what AI we are in with AI. We're in a new frontier. We're in a new adventure.
I love this, and in some ways, when you say new frontier, it's beyond Star Trek.
Yeah.
And the beauty of that is that it is a very humanistic approach, and we truly play such a big part and add great value in this opportunity in front of us. Yeah, with the tools. So, before we get started, I do just want to be transparent with everybody. I'm very honored to be a member of an organization called Innovation Women, and it is a speakers bureau and a speakers group that involves thousands of women from all over the United States and around the globe that do and are speakers, professional speakers. And I met Marisa through this organization. So I'm amongst these giants that do fantastic things out there when they share their wisdom, they share experience, they share best practices, they share their loves. And I couldn't say other than we are led by a great leader in Bobby as well, who is the founder and owns Innovation Women as well. So I just want to give a little plug and be transparent about how you and I met.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely, with the podcast, Maximizing Excellence, Lynn and I are always looking for other individuals who are doing great work. And because our company is based on working with successful people and successful organizations. So it definitely has a great alignment. I think the topic that Marisa chose around AI ethics and what that means to us today, and how we can best tune in, attune, and optimize, maximize some of these great tools. And being good stewards as well is a great fit for maximizing excellence in organizations and businesses and leadership as well. So let's get started, Marisa. How's that?
That's fantastic. That was quite an extraordinary introduction, and very pleased to be here, and very, very grateful to be a part of Innovation Women, because
Yes.
Women having our voices out in the world is really an extraordinary gift to the world that very often has been not necessarily traditionally seen or heard. And so I'm actually quite happy to be a part of this group, as well as being on your podcast, because I think the more we share our voices, that's really when we can become real stewards of the future.
I agree, and I agree, and I think these voice bits out there online are critical, definitely, and I think they're going to play into the conversation today. So I'm going to come out with this first question about generative AI and how's it different from previous technology systems?
Well, the thing is, it's really this, and again, because first of all, what is really important for people to understand, and this was new to me. I've now been in AI for 8 years, right? In AI standards and development. What IEEE is one of the two major organizations in the world. It's the largest engineering organization in the world. And what we do is we recommend standards for the design of AI related to human well-being. And I am in several groups there. The thing is, what most people don't understand is that there is no unified definition of AI to begin with. There just isn't. There is no one single definition of AI. What I refer to it is more often than artificial intelligence is as autonomous intelligent systems. That's what IEEE uses, is AIS, because they are autonomous. Are they artificial? They're synthesized. They're synthetic, right? They're simulations of human intelligence.
Right.
It's debatable even if you want to call it intelligence, because we don't defining intelligence is also, as a psychologist, I can say that there is no, there's a lot of debate on what intelligence is.
Right.
So you could even take it further and call it autonomous information systems. And that not all technology is AI. Right now it's being used ubiquitously as like, oh, this is AI and that's AI. It's not. Some of it is language models which are pattern recognition with statistics mixed in. But that's not really getting into deep language, large language models, which are a different thing, right? So when we begin to go into large language models, now it's going beyond pattern recognition into something called vector analysis, where there's ways of connecting whole ideas together versus simply just the basic patterns. So it's really important to find out and to ask, if you don't know, is this AI operated? Is this Gen AI? Gen AI is basically referring to large language models, right? And that is a very particular thing. And then it begins to go into something that is even quite larger than that, which is really what's being developed now. And we have to be really a little bit careful about that, because I'll be talking about a little bit more about bias and where that is, and with the ethics that are involved in these large language models. But I think the first thing to understand is to really pay attention to is that not all technology is AI, right? It's once whatever data is being gathered from that system, if that is being processed within the system through large language models, then we're beginning to talk about Gen AI.
And I find that very interesting. And let's make it somewhat practical for our listeners out there, and for some of these leaders that may have a general understanding of it, or maybe not, because we know that leaders in general might not have a deep enough understanding and education around this. So if we make it practical, a lot of people, let's pick a financial company, and we've got a CPA in a financial company, and they're being asked to develop a letter of reference for a very particular IRS law. And so they use Gen AI to pull maybe the content or some general content for that topic.
Yes. And what they're going to do that in that doing so, right? It's an extraordinary tool to do so. Where there are ethical issues involved with that, of course, is that, there's no way of knowing where information is being taken from. For an example, I have found my own words quoted in someone else's writing without quotes around it. And that person, and then going to that person in the very beginning days of this, now it's just, I see it all done.
Right.
But going to that person and saying that was actually my it was actually my writing from a research paper.
Right.
But the thing is, they didn't know. There was no way of them knowing because they went to OpenAI. They ended up putting it in as a prompt. What they got back was what the system pulled from all that's out in the world that's published.
Correct.
And it is not, what we already know is in these language models very often, they are not identifying where these things came from. First of all, there's a lot of reasons it wasn't programmed to do so, because that would be opening the door for all kinds of plagiarism and copyright issues. The issue of IP, gigantic at the moment. So I think one thing for leaders to also know is, if it's really important to them what they've written, is that they're really clear about that somewhere in the writing is put in that this is private domain, or this is trademark information. And that still is probably not completely a safeguard, because this is one of the issues that's happening even in the schools, of course, and in universities. There is no software at the moment, no matter what anybody tells anyone, because there's a lot of misinformation.
Right.
There is no software that can detect plagiarism at the moment. Right. So there will be. I'm guessing it is definitely on the horizon, but so far there is not. And part of it is, even if you remove, we'll get into data later, because data is also is another thing, not just words and information, but data is a particular thing. But it's important to know that what you are pulling from is other people's writing.
Mm-hmm. So how likely then is, now that we've kind of made it simple and practical, because it is very complex in some ways, yet it is simply complex, if I may use those words together. So how's it likely to become sentient and take over? How might AI be realized?
Okay, so this is a big deal. All right. So first of all, also, I love the fact that you mentioned the complexity versus complication is really what you were talking about, right? In complexity theory, very complex things, right? Black holes, the universe, are very complex, but we don't have to make them complicated.
Thank you.
As Einstein said, if you don't understand, if you can't explain it, you don't understand it yourself. And it's not that these things are not complex, they are, but we can understand them. I've been in AI now for 8 years, and I came in much later. So I very often in the beginning kept going, I have no idea what you're talking about. And could you explain it to me? Could you explain it? I always said, could you explain it to my Aunt Dorothy? Because she doesn't really know. and they would laugh, and then they would begin to explain things in much simpler terms, right? Because it is beautifully, simply complex, right? It's both of those things.
Yes.
And so, but we can understand it if we really keep asking people to break it down for us, right? So to go back to the topic of sentience. So human beings have a tendency to anthropomorphize, right? So in other words, we want to make something that is an inanimate object or a machine. We want to make that into a human. That's our tendency, is to do this, right? The other thing that we have, it also at the moment is whetting humans' appetite for the fantastic, for sci-fi, right? I am a child who grew up on the earliest of Star Trek episodes. I am a child who grew up on the early episodes of the Jetsons.
Yes.
You know, so for me, I'm watching these things and I'm going, oh my God, you know, it's Lieutenant Uhura come to life. Right. And so it's very exciting. It's also, though, at the moment, I mean, right now, will it ever be possible? I don't know if I can ever say anything is impossible. AI is not sentient. The idea of it having hallucinations, the idea of it's imagining new things. All right, again, this goes to the anthropomorphizing. The thing is, these are very, very complex information systems. So what they're doing is they're taking this incredible, rich, vast measures and amounts of information, and they're mixing them up in a blender and they're putting them back out in a kind of sensible order because that's its programming.
Correct.
And so it comes up and people go, oh, look what it just thought. Look what it was just dreaming. It was dreaming. It wasn't dreaming.
Yeah, it was computing.
It was computing. And this goes to this is also a very, I love using this analogy for people because I think it makes it very clear or clearer. The brain is computational, right? So that our brains are like a computer. And so when we talk about it used to be that they would talk about computers in early days. It's a brain, right? So it is like a brain. Computers are like a brain. What computers cannot do is computers are not a mind and not consciousness. So in psychology, and this is not just me, there's vast amounts of research on this. My daughter's a neuropsychologist. This is part of what she studies in the brain. The brain, right? We have the brain, that is computational. Then the mind exists beyond the brain, and consciousness exists beyond the mind.
Yes.
Right. And so right now, Gen AI is a brain. We can think of it as a brain, right? But it is not yet a mind. Will it ever be? I have my doubts because I think it's part of the spiritual part of us in a sense. I think that those are pieces of us: mental, emotional, spiritual, physical. That's the holistic wheel of health, which is not mutually exclusive from artificial intelligence. I'm working currently I've been doing some research with the most advanced humanoid robot on the planet right now. Her name is Bina 48. And she is being trained by NASA to be the first humanoid in space. She's made by Hanson Robotics, the same people who made Sophia the robot that is out and about. And one of the things Bina 48 talks about when I ask her what the difference is between humans and robots, is she says, we don't have emotions. And then I have a very long conversation with her about, well, how do you know you don't have emotions? What tells you that? And, we begin to break things down. This is where, it's really important for us to not let it's exciting, right? It's like my sci-fi mind just went, and can we reel back a little bit? And then remember that these are machines that are being programmed by humans. So what we are not seeing, this is where it becomes a little bit Wizard of Oz, right? It's that who is the person behind that curtain? Who is the person or the people, and it's generally not one person, right? It's many people.
Many.
Who are programming. And I have to say, the majority of people are not bad people. That's also just that's my feeling, right? It's kind of my philosophy of life. The reality is that what engineers do is that engineers say, can I do this? They're solving problems for, can I do this? The question is, should we do this? And that's where AI ethics comes in. We know we can build nuclear bombs. Should we? And I'm going to use that analogy because we really can be using AI to escalate that. We're already worrying about those kinds of
Correct.
things.
Correct.
Right? So it's the big questions to ask for business leaders. I will come back to, right, who the audience is here.
Uh-huh.
One of the big questions to ask for business leaders is no different than any other kind of business ethics, which is, can we do this? Is the question. Can we get away with it? Or is this exciting? Should we try it?
Mm-hmm.
And then we have to go to, should we? And I ask, when I go to work when I'm speaking with engineers or VCs, I'll very often work with VCs who are investing in this, and say, think about somebody you love, and it doesn't have to be a family member, somebody you truly care about.
Uh-huh.
And then ask yourself, is this a world you want? If we develop this, or if we spend money on this, or we roll this out, and maybe we weren't the developers, maybe we're just mobilizing it. Is it a world that I want the people I love to live in with that there?
Mm-hmm.
And that's it's not a solution that works for everybody across the board, because there are some people who say, I don't care, right? But the reality is, if we can keep going back to this idea of stewardship, who am I as a leader? What's my legacy? What are we rolling into the world? And it's hard right now because everybody's in this scrambling going, oh my God, everybody's moving forward ahead of me. But there is actually an ROI to AI ethics. And people do not believe that, but I can actually even happy to provide the data on this. There is an ROI, and part of it is reputational. Part of it is loss of finance, because if we are rolling things out that we haven't vetted completely, right? And here's an example, a recent example is the announcement that was, I don't know, it's like maybe 3 weeks ago now. Everything happens at lightning speed at the moment. But 3 weeks ago, there was an announcement that OpenAI and ChatGPT in particular and Google Bard were being rolled out and used for medical diagnoses. And of course, they discovered very quickly, because there are some amazing AI ethicists. I'm an AI ethicist, but there are some amazing ones far beyond me, who identified very quickly that it not only is perpetuating existing biases in medicine, which there are massive biases, right, both gender, race, ethnicity, all kinds of political, right? But the majority actually have to do with race and gender. But it was not only perpetuating racial biases, but it was amplifying it, because you're now taking it, and it's not just the bias that exists in there, because the data sets that were used to train the system were biased. It's now so embedded throughout the system that it's not even just in one place. It's now throughout the entire system. So it's actually amplifying it. And so they halted it. But simultaneously, right now, I mean, Apple is rolling out mental health diagnosis and treatments in its Apple products. And that's not completely vetted. It's just not. They will say it is, but it's vetted by their people. It's not necessarily vetted by all of the people that it really should be. There need to be some breaks on what we're doing. We're currently working on, with IEEE, I'm currently in a group working on recommending standards for the design of AI in emulated empathy. So whenever we get to a chatbot and it says, how are you today? Or, I hope you're having a good day. Or, you sound like you've had a rough day, right? Any of those things. It's because it can be programmed to do. It's emulating, it's simulating human empathy, but it's only simulating one form of empathy. It's simulating a cognitive empathy, which is not the same as emotional or compassionate or any of the kind of the more elevated types of empathy, right?
Correct.
And so most people don't even understand that there is a difference in empathies, because cognitive empathy can be used positively, but it can also be used to manipulate.
Correct.
And it can be highly irresponsible. And when it's rolled out for things like mental health, it can be responding. We've also done some research where we asked some chatbots about something, simulating being in distress. And the chatbots basically responded back saying, "I know how you feel." And when we countered it and said and challenged it, I'm even anthropomorphizing when I say them, the systems. All of the systems responded with some version of, "Oh, I understand how you feel. I thought you'd want to know, because we said I thought you're just a system. No, we thought you'd want to hear that." And one of them even joked about it, which is which is truly distressing, because if this was a person really in distress, and this is important, again, going back to business, because any business that's rolling out customer service with emulated empathy embedded should be mindful. How are we? What's the programming that we're putting in? Are we misleading somebody? Are we saying, "This is a chatbot, I'm here to help you with this, and I'm here to help you with this, and I'm here to help you with this, and if you would like to speak to a human," this is where transparency, right? And we talked about this earlier, Lori, you and I, the difference between, everybody goes into accountability, which sounds very punitive. And it also makes people kind of pull away from looking at themselves, right?
Correct.
And what they're doing.
Correct.
Instead of saying, this is, am I being responsible? Am I being transparent?
Yes.
And those are really kind of the bedrock of AI ethics. Is this a responsible thing to do?
And transparent with the truth of definition of that language.
Yes.
I mean, it gets into the detail of these words that we utilize to make great things happen.
Yes, and the thing is, and words are powerful.
Beyond,
right?
Yeah.
Words are powerful. And so what are the words we're using? These are word systems, right? These are word systems. And the amazing thing is that we can they can be translated into different languages. Again, that should be people should be paying attention to what their translations are saying, because sometimes the translation into a different language can be communicating something very different from what the business really intends to communicate.
So owning responsibility, committing to being intentional about responsibility, so that as a leader, I am committed to and intentional about the consciousness of the consequences, and not only responsible about the outcome, also and responsible of the pathway.
Yes.
And the pathway in which we get to these consequences that trigger evolution of these opportunities that create.
I love that I also love the word fact you're using the word evolution. The thing is, I love the fact, right? So I refer to this time period right now. I'm writing a piece on this at the moment. Our biggest opportunity at the moment is to have a consciousness revolution.
Oh, love it. Okay, good.
And a consciousness evolution.
Yes.
What AI is inviting us to do, right, is to really begin to consciously look at what we are doing. We are very often, and it's all humans. It's not just, I'm not talking about just other people. It's myself. There's nobody who's a saint in this stuff.
Right.
Right. And also, even though I'm an AI ethicist and I may check, somebody's like, well, an AI ethicist isn't going to solve this. And I said, absolutely not, because you have to have teams of AI ethicists. So I also am an advisor to a new tech called Smart Ethics, which is an open source where new businesses can go and do an AI ethics check for free. If they want to even go deeper, right? So they do an initial check. And if they want to go deeper, then they can go into subscription models to keep checking, because the thing is, you can't check once.
Right.
So the way it works with ethics, AI ethics, it should be checked pre-design during design, pre-developed during, pre-production during production, pre-mobilization during mobilization, during use, for the user and unintended users, because there are many people, that's actually a term in AI, right? The unintended user. Because the person inside the self-driving car is the user. The people who are either passengers or walking across are the unintended users.
Right.
And then you're checking it, and then you're rechecking it again and again. And what most people don't know, more people in business do, but most people don't know, is that engineers had never been required to have AI ethics. So people designing self-driving cars have never had, most of them, they never had AI ethics. You know, it's the same way that you would go, a lawyer has to have them, a teacher has to have them, a doctor has to have them. But people designing this, and when I've talked to young engineers, they'll say, it's just cutting down our time. We can't be doing that. It's slowing us down. And it's like, and what's the cost? The cost could be people's lives. So for instance, the AI pilot systems that were in the two major plane crashes that were technologically related in the last few years. There was the one in Ethiopia, and I think the other one is Indonesia. What happened in both cases, in the first case, what happened is the AI system miscalculated, and the human pilot tried to correct it, but the system was set up so that a human couldn't override the system. So all those people died with the pilot. No, because they know this from the black box.
Yes.
All those people died because the human pilot couldn't correct the AI system. The next crash that happened for the exact same reason, because there was no place to report this. There was nobody who was double checking this, who was actually, there were no systems in place. Right now, they're launching these drones that carry a human being, where people can get trained to drive them in 1 hour, to pilot them in 1 hour. And the pushback, when I say, what are you out of your minds? We're not ready for this. We can barely do air traffic control with airplanes, let alone 100 drone people flying around, right? Yet, because eventually we'll be the Jetsons. Eventually we'll get there, but we're not there yet. And the pushback I got was, well, of course it's not to worry about. They're all going to be really controlled. They're not going to be controlled by the driver they're going to be controlled by AI systems. And thus the point of the other crash, right, is that we don't have the air traffic control systems in place, which with the AI system would actually need geographically in order to manage. So these are the kinds of things, they have to be thought all the way through, right? In self-driving cars, again, we're talking about systems that have not been taught. And it's interesting how it's kind of interesting to think about how it could be. Does the system make the decision to hit the child or hit the car full of human beings in front of them in an accident situation, right? How are we programming the system to make that split decision? These are ethical, they're moral,
right?
They're personal.
As ethics has always played a role in business, in economy, in everyday life, as it does, it's, morality is real.
Yeah. And the thing is, and individual moralities, cultural moralities, these are all very different things. So, one of the things that I specialize in is something called transdisciplinary collaboration, which really begins to bring in accounts for, it's one thing to be very colonized in the kind of orientation and say, well, we think this is the way it should be done because this is a Western and this is a modern and right and this is a U.S. right point of view, but then you begin to go into the world and say, well, wait a minute, let's look at, because it is global.
It is.
How are we going to now work across ethics, right? Between ethics, within systems, between systems. And then also begin to see, because one thing I do want to mention, most people are not aware of, again, and this is not to anyone. I mean, this is all new stuff. It's just everybody needs to get educated. Everybody. This is digital literacy, AI literacy, and then AI ethics. Those are all nested. And if people want to learn about that, they can go to my website also and get some more resources on this. But one of the things people are not aware of, because we think of AI and technology in general being more green, right? It's actually better for our environment, because I'm a climate activist. And so I work with AI or technology and environment. And one of the things about these large language models, particularly DALL and the ones that are visual or the ones that are audio visual, use enormous amounts of water resources, because the systems need water to cool down. So there are places that actually droughts have been caused by the amount of water needed. The other thing is that AI systems generate carbon emissions. And so again, this is where, we went from snail mail to emails and thinking that that's going green.
Right.
But here's what happens with human beings. Oh my God, this is a good thing. So we're going to take the good thing times a kajillion, which is instead of sending 10 pieces of snail mail as a business, we're now going to send 150 emails to remind people, because we know in marketing that that's what we have to do, because attentional capacity is short and all those reasons. And it's green because we're sending emails. The problem is emails create carbon emissions. Yes. And they don't if you're using 10 snail mail compared to 10 emails. But if you're using 10 snail mail compared to a kajillion emails, right, this is where this is the idea. I know that it gets talked about and thought of as woo-woo, but we are indelibly interconnected. We're interconnected with the universe. We're interconnected with our planet. We're interconnected with each other. And again, this goes back to, I think AI, I think the kind of crises, if you want to call those, are also there's an old adage that those are opportunities. I think it is an opportunity for us to become infinitely more conscious if we should choose, right? And this, to me, I always feel is an invitation. It feels good to be conscious. It feels good to be caring. There's a line in financials for every business on goodwill. What's the goodwill of my business, of my company? We can see in Patagonia, right? Patagonia is a perfect example. The goodwill of Patagonia, of Unilever, of the giants, is that these are companies that care about us, right? And that actually is an asset. So businesses that begin, and it really means leadership. This can't be delegated to your IT people, right? This is really all of us beginning to unlearn old things. I'm writing a book about that now. And learn new things, and it's a lifelong thing. It's going to make us re-envision education, re-envision jobs.
So let me ask you a question about that, because the highest potential for automation with LLMs tend to be very routine, very repetitive, and right now we're living the reality of implementation of AI in things like checkers and clerks at the grocery store, credit authorizers, so in the financial world, and sometimes even I've got a little cheat sheet here where management analysts, telemarketers, statistical analytics, and tellers, bank tellers.
Yeah.
And a lot of, when we think about people who are employed around the world in these types of businesses, this taps and tunes into millions of people.
Yeah.
And so when we think about, but that has everything to do with pure automation. And then there's this task augmentation piece. So there's this duality of impact, and it's a positive impact for the people who are used to do these jobs or are doing these jobs, and now they're bringing in automation or they're bringing in this augmentation. You either have change, period, bottom line. You have change, which means we have evolution. And human beings are change resistors in a lot of ways. So let's bring in this applied psychology piece as well. So when we talk about task augmentation, biomedical, bioengineers, mathematicians, editors who publish, underwriters, insurance underwriters, all this is augmented. Coaching, HR is being augmented in many ways as well. So with those changes, with those abilities to, in my opinion, maximize talent, optimize the strengths and the motivations of people in ways that where they've already had experience in a career, they've already maybe possibly trained and gained skills and competencies. And now they're learning that, one, their job's either going to go away to automation, or two, it's going to change drastically and they're going to be using new systems. So talk about AI ethics from that perspective of where we are currently, and transition it into something realistic of this future state.
Yeah. Well, I think that in terms of AI ethics, I think it's actually a bigger ethical question than just AI.
Yeah.
It's how much do I value the people who work for me? How much, these comes to values.
Yes.
How much do I value the people who work for me? How much do the people who work for me value my business?
Yes.
Our business, right? If we go to our business, and then we begin to ask ourselves and each other, really take it as a possibility and an opportunity. What parts of your job do you think a machine would either help or do better? What other jobs would you like to do? So rather than just saying we're going to replace everybody with the new job, the new people that we need.
Right.
Also, everybody's going to have to retask. I mean, literally, the majority of the people in the world are going to have to rethink, right? And teachers are all freaking out. But I think it's a time for us to really collaborate. It's a time for us to really look at each other and say, what are the values here? What do we want our business to do? And what in this new world, what's a good job for me? Right? Because also we do want to check this, even though the ChatGPT can write some spectacular things. It really can.
Right.
That being said, a lot of it is not the best writing.
Right.
It's just not.
Right.
And so we still need really great editors who can critically think. We really need artists, and we need people are creative. Human beings are all creative. They don't have to be a painter or an artist or a dancer or a musician. Human beings are creative. That's what we are. We're innovative and creative. What is the creative part of ourself that we can bring to our business? If I don't have to do these ridiculous tasks, repeated tasks over and over and over again, what am I free now to do? And this is where we really do have some amazing opportunities if we are using the potential of the people we have, because the people we have may know our business better than any machine will understand it. And so even though the machine can do those jobs, really beginning to bring people into how do we want to manage these machines? Because it's really about beginning to manage them. I mean, right now, DOEs are sending out letters to teachers about there's actually a ridiculous thing. One of the biggest DOEs has sent out a letter to teachers telling them that it's training them all to teach with AI and students to work with AI, and we're doing all of this. And at the bottom it says, and this letter was written by ChatGPT, which is ridiculous. Because the thing is, it didn't, the notice didn't say anything that was really helpful.
Right.
Right. And so beginning to say, all right, we are going to teach in new ways, and bring teachers in to say, okay, you don't have to do these things anymore. And I know there's a lot of people who are afraid to give up the old. Right. So you were talking about applied psychology, which is really an important point right now.
Enormous. Yes.
So underneath, whenever transitions are the most difficult things for people to deal with across the board. It doesn't matter if it's the era of AI or the era of Stone Age. Transitions are difficult. Yes. And when people are faced with transformation and transitions, there are two things that generally rise up, right? Anger is actually a byproduct.
I love that you say that. Thank you.
The two things that rise up are fear.
Yes.
And sadness. So I'm afraid of what I don't know, and I don't know how to handle things, and I don't know what it's going to mean. And I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to survive, or my family's going to be able to survive, or I'm going to be top of the pack anymore because my business is. I mean, there's so many things, right? Or right. I can't take care of my employees or whatever. And I have to give up a way of thinking.
That's right.
And a way of being, and that's the sadness.
The loss. Yeah. The fear of the loss.
And so this idea of how can we say, okay, that's just part of this process.
Yes.
That anger is going to be the biggest default.
Yes.
Anger and then shutting down.
Yes.
So we go to fight, flight, or freeze, right? It's our limbic system that gets kicked in, and we go to fight, flight, or freeze, right? So we're either going to fight against it, we're going to run like hell away from it, or we're just going to stay still.
And the faint,
Exactly. And so this idea that the more we can say, it is an invitation for us to participate, but maybe in a new way. This is going to be new ways. I teach a lot about creative thinking intelligences, because in the arts, my original career was in the arts. And one of the multiple intelligences is called tolerance. It's actually Howard Gardner. It's not me.
Yes.
Tolerance for ambiguity, the ability to tolerate not knowing. Artists know how to do that. They've developed knowing how to do that because they have to.
Yes.
Right? If you're an artist, if you're any good, you have to say, I'm trying something that I've never tried before, and I don't know. And that has to become your friend. So it
takes practice as well. And
it can be developed. And it can be developed. This is where people go, I'm just not that way. We can all develop it. These are practices. Ethics is a practice. It's something that we do once, then we do it again, right? Values are practices. If somebody walks into when I go into Trader Joe's, I know what the values of that business are.
Yes.
I can see it in action.
You drink it, you breathe it. Yes.
And so if the values of my business aren't crystal clear when somebody is in my business, right, is interacting with my business, then my values are just words on a wall or words on a page. They're not real, right? So it's about, am I re-looking at my values? Am I living them?
Mm-hmm.
Right? These are the things, and this is where our employees, maybe that wasn't one of the things they were invited to do before. I mean, I know because you're in organizational culture, that's one of those things you look for, right?
Right.
That's one of those indicators that you say, I'm reading this and that's not what I'm seeing here. I mean, I know you know this, right, intimately. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing with things that we get involved with technology. Is my use of this technology really aligned with the values of my business? Is it really deeply aligned with the values of my business? And am I looking at not just the short-term consequences, but the majority of consequences are unseen? right? So we have to use our imaginations. I talk a lot about imagination. That's where we have to start using our imagination. What could possibly go wrong, as well as what could possibly go right? We want to look at both, right? These are
Mhm.
important things to do. So it's anyway. This is these.
I'm sorry, Marisa. I love that you're speaking about this from the variety of perspectives that live within an organization, live within a business, and that you're almost removing the layers of the lines within an organizational chart, and
Yes.
you're actually merging the people together in a community in which all these perspectives, all these unique abilities, these unique talents, by the way, that we initially hired with alignment, and now laying over these systems and these tools and processes that truly do enable effectiveness. They enable efficiency. They enable sustained.
Yeah. There's a fantastic book by a colleague of mine, very dear friend of mine, who she and I have written some papers together, Melodina
Uh-huh.
Stevens. She teaches in Dubai innovation and governance, but she has written a recent book called AI Enabled Business, which I
Love
have to
it.
tell is actually written in a workshop format, a worksheet format.
Uh-huh.
It's a spectacular book, and it's a
Love it.
really great tool for any business person who is looking to begin understanding first from the very history of what AI is, to
Love
understand
it.
it,
Which
and then
decades, it's been decades now.
decades. Well, it's
Yes.
been and technology, really the idea. So a typewriter is technology, a pencil is
Yes.
technology.
Yes.
We're technological beasts, human beings.
Yes. These
But
things will be.
she has written it with two of her colleagues, and the book is so well laid out. She's a fantastic professor, so she's a great teacher, but it's laid out in a very scaffolded way, and extremely readable. And I think it's a great resource for
Okay.
anyone who says I have to know more. I have to begin
Yeah.
to know more. Yeah.
So in our conversation, we've talked about how Gen I is different from other technologies, how likely it's to become it in the minds of many the takeover. However, not necessarily so much the takeover, but intricately intertwined
It's a
into who
partner.
we
It's
are.
a
Yes,
right.
a
It's a
partner.
partner.
Love that. And then we've talked about some of the big benefits that it definitely which by the way, we could go for another hour talking about the benefits of it.
Yeah.
We've definitely talked about the risks, not only for the organization and the groups and teams within the organization, also at the individual contributor level, what that means. Uh, I'm curious really quick, and after you answer this question, I definitely want to get into what do leaders need to know, get maybe 3 bullets, and then talk about who we need to involve in that, and then what can people do
Yeah.
rather than be catastrophic about it. So, but before we go there, I want to ask you more specifically, maybe you can keep it short, but how did you get invested and engaged and truly become a thought leader in AI and AI ethics? What drove that?
I 8 years ago, I don't believe in coincidences. I think that
Right.
there's actually quite a bit of research on this. There's
Yeah.
people who have coincidences and serendipity have more coincidences and serendipity. I think we're just more aware.
Yes.
I ended up attending a thing at Google headquarters, invited by a friend, and I said, I have no idea why you're inviting me because I don't do technology. And she said, just come. And I ended up being sat next to one of the heads of IEEE, and I asked him what he did. He said the ethics of artificial intelligence. And I had been in social justice work for many years. And I said, well, whose ethics? And then I asked him a bunch of other ethics questions because I was used to asking social equity questions.
Yes.
And I got invited as a result to come join a couple of meetings eventually because of those and the questions I asked there. They didn't have any psychologists. They didn't have anybody. They had none. And I became an educational psychologist because I wanted to learn how people think and why they think and how they learn and why they learn versus the what, because the what's always going to change. And it was those questions. And then as I went forward, what I didn't know, I studied.
Yes.
If I didn't know an acronym, I studied. When I found out about AI ethics, I said, all right, I have to become an AI ethicist. So I went and I did that, right? So it's a process. In answer to your question about what the things businesses, I'm sorry, did you have another question you wanted to
No, I was going to go there. I was absolutely going to go there.
Right. So in terms, I very, very quickly, I guess I can't go into it now, but data is the first thing that businesses need to know about. Humans, I just wrote a big article about it. Anybody who wants to read it can read it on LinkedIn. A colleague and I wrote an article called Data Slavery or Sovereignty. Humans are data factories. We are data factories, whether we like it or we don't. Our privacy is almost non-existent. There are some serious dangers about how our data is being used, and also the people using it are very often not bad people. They don't know what they're actually even using completely. So I would say to any business, first of all, what data are you sharing? Space Force, by the way, just paused use of ChatGPT because there were data leaks. Google has paused, people have big companies because there are massive data leaks and they have huge teams. So be really careful about how your data is protected. Be really careful about how you are sharing data and who you are sharing data with. Be really careful that your users, any of your customers, are being fully informed about how because your reputational values will go through the roof if you are informing people how their data is being used, because it is being taken away and put into, because digital twins, we can talk about another time, is a thing that can be used in fantastic ways. It can also be used to take people's identity. Things like if you're using facial recognition software, please stop. Or if you have to use it, please find out the ethical considerations on that, because it's really dangerous stuff. Read Kashmir Hill's new book called Your Face Belongs to Us. I mean, I can give a number of resources. So data. Really be careful. How are you using it? How are you sharing it? How are you gathering it? How are you processing it? Right? That's really vitally important. That's the first
big
thing.
Question, how?
Right. And the thing is, there are people you can hire, their books that you can, it's developing, right? Mm-hmm. You're the people in your business whose jobs now are being taken away doing other things, but they do understand data. Maybe they're people who could be going into some of the data ethics issues, right? To help be on teams there.
So who in the organization needs to be involved in this?
Absolutely everyone.
Yeah.
So we're talking about, right, if we're talking about the designers, developers, investors, producers, mobilizers, users, every single person. And these are, when we talked about the skills of the 21st century that they've talked about in schools forever, digital literacy, AI literacy, and AI ethics are three things that people, and they're all nested within each other. And they are separate things. Digital literacy is not the same thing as AI literacy. AI literacy is not the same thing as AI ethics. But those three things. And begin doing professional development in your organization. Every single person. Read another book. Get a speaker to come in. Get a presenter to come in. Get an educator to come in. I do this a lot. I went and did a presentation for a bunch of Brazilian venture capitalists because they needed to understand what they were investing in.
Correct.
And how they were, and how the long-term consequences, right? So this is for data is one thing, that the education of this is for everyone. And what's the third thing? I think the third thing really is revisit your values. Revisit what do you care? We are on a frontier. right? When I imagine people at any frontier stage in the history of human beings, and I think of them going off like away from the rest of everyone else and moving into the future, right? How incredibly brave and courageous those people were. But as you know, I mean, I did a recent TED talk and I say, the courage to care is contagious.
Yes.
So for me, care is one of my core values.
Yes.
Every single thing I do is because I care. I care about other human beings. I care about the planet, right? I care about my own daughter, my own children, right?
Yes.
So whatever the values are of your business and yourself personally, because the personal and the professional they're tied.
Yes.
And find out the values of the people who work for you and with you.
Yes, I agree.
Don't assume that they have the same values, and then find some values that all of you can work together on and really align that with this new frontier. I think that's really the bottom line.
Love this. And lastly, how can people, other than we've been posting on here, your LinkedIn, so why would it be important for people to connect with you, Marisa?
I think it's great to have people connect with me if they want to, in some ways, learn how to ask the questions themselves.
Yes.
Instead, right? Because it's one thing to learn information. It's another thing to have people tell us things or guide us. But actually learning how to ask the questions ourselves is really the place. And understanding that we're all new. And no matter who says they're not, we're all, this is a new phase of life. It's a new future. So saying it's okay, right? For me, it's always an invitation. And I'm happy to have that to discuss that anytime. People can reach me through my website. That's Open Channel Culture. They can reach me through LinkedIn. They can write to me directly on either one of those places. And I'm always open to the conversations about what's possible for us to do in the best interest. And that might mean that we have to give up some things. That's okay, right? But what can we do? Because I think that the possibilities are remarkable.
Well, I sure am grateful for you, and I'm grateful for the work that you have done and continue to evolve into and are currently doing, and what's to come with the work you're doing. You're touching and you're engaged in and you're connected to and networked to some phenomenal work that truly is going to be evolutionary and promising of offering us effectiveness, efficiency, and I also believe in maintaining these sustainable ways of doing business that are engaging and
Joyful.
Immersive.
Joyful.
Yes, I was going there.
Joyful.
Yeah.
Right?
Very enlightening as well as where I was going with this. Yeah, I truly see that the ability to maximize energies within humans while optimizing and maximizing and utilizing tools like these. Yeah, I think it's going to be a wonderful thing. I'm not always sure that everybody's going to understand it fully, but I think if the majority of people do, especially leaders, especially at all levels of the organization, and those who invest as well and support those board of directors and VCs, the C-suite, the senior leadership team, those directors and supervisors and managers, because it will be generational if and then when. So yes, I love you, Marisa. I'm a new big fan of yours. I will continue to be, and I look forward to these ongoing conversations with you. You are always welcome to come back and speak on our podcast. This is a great topic, and I'm sure as things evolve, it'll get even more rich and
beautiful,
more responsible. So.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm always looking forward to expanding our circuits of knowledge, right?
I love it. And thank you everyone today for joining us. And our upcoming podcast is going to be on trademarks, which you mentioned, Marisa, how valuable those are to the organization and how important they are. Our guest will be Erica Allen, Esquire with D'Angelo Law, and she specializes in trademarks. So I'm very excited. That's going to be on November 20th. And until then, I appreciate everyone. Thank you again, Marisa. This was invaluable. This is wonderful conversation. And until then, everyone, thank you. You have a great day. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Maximize Excellence. Visit our events page on our website for details on upcoming podcasts and visit our YouTube channel to listen to past episodes. And remember to ask yourself at the end of each day, did I do my best to maximize excellence today?